In our modern world, obsessed with external success and validation, we often forget the part of us that truly needs to grow, our inner world, the conditioning, patterns, beliefs, and untold stories that shape our lives. Here at the Inner Bloom podcast, we explore the psychology and spiritual wisdom that helps us understand ourselves, break cycles, and return to who we really are. This is where inner growth begins. Have you ever been in a relationship or friendship where you just wanted to grow something healthy together? Consistency, commitment, being able to open up to each other, a future that made sense, yet still watched it slowly fall out? You realized over time that there were variables about the other person that you couldn't control. Their emotional availability, their ability to communicate about their internal world, their priorities, and because your end goal was still the same, making it work, you started doing more and more to fill in the gaps that they should have been filling themselves. You explained yourself again. You became more patient. You adjusted. Maybe they're just a bad texter. They'll get back to me by the end of day. This is a hard time for them. I'm sure they'll get back to how they were before. But somewhere in that process, you lost yourself. Instead of acting out of who you truly are, you started becoming more reactive to how they were being. And what started as love turned into effort. It was now a project that you spent so much time and effort into that you need to just see it through. I don't think this happens because we are desperate people. I think this happens because we are conditioned to see life as something that we can control, and the more we can control things, the more success we can get with it. But I think time and time again, relationships like this still end up not working out, or we end up more disappointed the more we try to control, especially other people. We live in a society that is obsessed with control. In the workplace, it's all about deadlines. Humans are rewarded so much for predictability, for managing outcomes, and especially for staying in line, for staying agreeable. Even in fashion, if you dress out of line, you look out of line, you're almost judged. So we bring this kind of mindset into our personal lives. We want people to like us, and we put ourselves in situations where we know will be accepted. So we control all of these variables, and we think that this control is security, but it's more so fear. It's the fear of losing the outcome that we are attached to. So we try to force certainty instead of trusting what we cannot predict. And that's what today's episode is about, the fine balance between control and letting go. It's about what happens when control turns into resistance and how letting go can bring you back to yourself from both a Taoist and psychological perspective. Let's get into it. The key to living a life that feels intentional but not exhausting is learning the balance between controlling what you can and trusting the rest to unfold. There is a quote by Lao Tzu, the creator of Taoism, that I keep coming back to. So he says, "The living are soft and yielding, the dead are rigid and stiff. Living plants are flexible and tender, the dead are brittle and dry." So I think about this a lot when I think about us and control. Because when we're really alive, we're adaptable and we respond and we move with the flow of life. But when we're coming from a place of fear, we get rigid and we try to lock life in place. And this especially happens when we're attached to a certain outcome in our life. when we're attached to how somebody should be acting. A lot of the times we think that our life should be going a certain way. But if we embrace the flow of life and the universe, if you believe in the universe, usually the universe has a different plan that is actually best for us. We think we know what's best for us, but I don't think we really do. And tapping into and trusting that the universe will maybe cut out the people who are not the best for us or give us challenges that we really don't want to face but are actually the best for our growth will actually take us to places that we cannot even imagine for ourselves, but will open doors that we cannot even comprehend. That is honestly the beauty of being alive and just trusting in life. Going with the flow isn't just a in the moment thing every day that, oh yeah, let's have this fun night out and go with the flow. I like to see going with the flow as a balancing way of life to control what you can and to also trust that life or the universe will lead you to your highest path. This balance, though, of knowing when to act and when to let nature do its thing is actually really sophisticated. And that's what Lao Tzu was trying to talk about. So not all control is bad. Self-control especially matters. For example, going to the gym on days that you especially don't want to, but it's in your scheduled programming, or making sure that you submit your work deadline so that you don't get fired or you get a good grade in school. But too much control, to control, somebody else's mind or to control nature too much will create resistance. We tend to underestimate how much life knows how to move on its own. Another metaphor I like is the tree metaphor. So you can plant a tree, you can water it, you can make sure it gets sunlight, and you can even fertilize it. But there is a point where doing more to the tree actually starts doing harm, like overwatering it or over fertilizing it. And at some point, the tree needs time to do its own thing. It needs its own process, I would argue, more than it needs your own hands on it. That's where doing too much effort can turn into interference. An example of this is attraction. You can put in the control to put yourself out there, go on a date with somebody, show that you're interested in them, give them flowers or show your appreciation in other ways. And at that point, the attraction to build needs time. And if somebody does not feel attraction, you cannot necessarily do many things to force that attraction. Either attraction happens or it doesn't happen. And I want to touch a little bit on trying to control our thoughts and emotions, because not only do we try to control the external world, we also try to control our own mind. Even when we go through a separation with somebody, even though physically it's over, we often want to stalk their social media, or they keep living in our heads. We always bring them up in conversations, or we always think, what if it went this way, or they were a different person? In our minds, we're trying to control that person still in our brain. Why? Because we're still trying to internally try to control this outcome. But if we can work on trying to surrender that I release this person energetically, you can actually move on in life with peace despite the uncomfortable process. That is the more freeing part of letting go of the internal control. And that's a good segue into what psychology says about how to let go, the benefits of letting go, and why we struggle so much with letting go. So there is a reason why we have a tendency to control our external and internal worlds. And psychology gives us 5 reasons why letting go is so difficult. So the first is that we have a fear of uncertainty. So our brains prefer familiar pain over unknown peace. And even unhealthy patterns feel safer than change. So similar to the example of a breakup, we would rather live in that reality of a person that did not serve us best than to think of a world without them, because that was familiar. The fear of the unknown is so large to us that we would rather stay in a dynamic that we at least know what to expect. The next reason is emotional attachment. So attachments give us identity and belonging, and letting go, be it externally or energetically, can feel like losing a part of yourself. And losing a part of yourself often entails a lot of grief, questioning who you truly are, and that can be extremely uncomfortable. The next reason is the sunk cost fallacy. And what the sunk cost fallacy is this false belief that if we invest a lot, be it time, energy, or love, into something or someone, we should hold on to that because it is now more valuable. But all of these resources spent is not necessarily a reason to stay, but we often convince ourselves that these are reasons to stay. The next is societal pressure. And this one I think is so subconscious, but very true. Like, toxic love is romanticized in songs and movies. Endurance, working towards this love, breaking up and making up and sacrificing a bunch for somebody, cutting off ties with your family, doing all this dramatic stuff is glorified, and timelines are imposed. And we're often praised, at least in media, for holding on, but not for choosing something more peaceful, which is often letting go. And the final one is kind of related to losing part of yourself, but it is a fear of loss. So letting go involves grief, and humans resist pain. But avoiding grief doesn't avoid pain, it delays it. And oftentimes, if you stick to the wrong job or the wrong relationship, you're going to end up grieving something else. So it's honestly a pick your own battles sort of thing. I would argue that it might be better to let go of something that is going to lead to a lot more pain in the future and go through a phase of uncomfortability for a much more brighter future ahead. Now I'm going to go over the 5 stages of letting go from a psychological lens. The process of letting go is completely non-linear and variable from person to person, also depending on the situation, but high level, these are the 5 stages most people expect to go through. And I'm going to give examples for somebody who unexpectedly got laid off from their job. So the first stage is acceptance, and it is acknowledging the reality that the person or situation no longer aligns with your goals, values, or well-being, and also have an understanding about it. It is honoring the impact of what you're letting go while recognizing that it's time to move forward. And I see this stage as not completely integrating the past as your story and moving on. It's simply acknowledging that this does not fit into my future, and I will do my best to actively move forward in the path that best serves my highest self in what I can see right now. I do not have this 9-to-5 job anymore. My company laid me off for XYZ reasons that they gave me, and now I have to live my life. The next stage is emotional processing, and honestly, this stage is the most uncomfortable because it is a whirlwind of emotions, and it is very non-linear, and it's hard to pinpoint when the stage can be complete. It can take months sometimes, so please give yourself permission to feel everything fully without judgment. It is totally normal to feel everything you're feeling, and some scenarios can be really challenging to go through. It is especially helpful to seek help of a close friend, family member, or therapist if you have access to one, and you will feel a bunch of emotions: grief, anger, sadness, fear, even relief, to name a few. And processing these emotions is a very critical part of the letting go journey, because bottling up or ignoring these feelings can make the process even more difficult and prolong emotional suffering. You must purge everything. It's like, in order to properly clean your closet, you have have to remove everything from your closet in order to reorganize it properly. So by facing your feelings head on, you can untangle the emotional attachments that are holding you back and hopefully achieve clarity from the situation. Which leads us into step 3, which is reframing. Reframing can help you shift your perspective from loss into opportunity, because after you purge out all of the emotions, you are able to see your own situation from a more objective standpoint, and you can see your life for what it is right now. Sometimes it feels like your ending is a new beginning, and reframing can really help you see the positive outcomes of this new life you now have. For example, after your layoff, maybe you start to pay more attention to the side hustle you were working on, or you realize that I was actually unsatisfied and I'm grateful a little bit that they laid me off. I was actually too scared to leave, so they did it for me, and now I can explore other opportunities, or now I'm encouraged to go into higher education, or you find a new hobby or a new community by going to the gym regularly because now you have more time to explore new communities not related to work. The next step is mindfulness. Through the resilience you've built by reframing, you feel more grounded in the present moment. And this is essentially mindfulness, because you start to focus on how this experience is shaping you today. You can feel at peace living in the present. So practices like meditation or observing your thoughts like clouds passing through the sky greatly helps build resilience and strengthens your ability to release attachments. And the final stage of letting go is setting boundaries in your life. So the person who got laid off, setting boundaries to them might look like not letting a job loss define your value. Or it might look like giving yourself time to process instead of rushing into the next thing just to feel safe again. Or it might look like setting limits around how much you talk about work to other people, or how much of your energy you give to stress and comparison internally. So boundaries aren't just about setting it with other people, they're also about how you relate to yourself. So whether this process of letting go is in a job, a relationship, or a phase of life ending, boundaries are how letting go becomes real. And of course, they can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to pushing through or over-functioning or being a people pleaser. But setting boundaries are truly an act of self-respect, and going through this process of letting go really makes you a more resilient, more self-respected, and stronger person. So the next time you catch yourself feeling constantly uncomfortable, chasing clarity with somebody, overthinking, trying to manage every variable, that is a sign that something is not flowing. Life is not flowing with you. You're going against a current. When you're gripping onto a person, a job, or an idea so tightly that you've lost the meaning of why you've wanted it in the first place, you are confusing the feeling of safety with fear. And letting go in those moments doesn't happen all at once. It is a process. It is uncomfortable, and sometimes it is painful and takes a long time. But that process is actually what helps you grow the most and what makes you stronger. Because when you let go, you learn where your responsibility ends and where boundaries need to begin. You learn how to stop over-functioning. You learn how to protect your energy. Whether it's a relationship, a job, or a phase of life ending, letting go teaches you self-trust. And today's wise quote that wraps up the episode ties in really well with today's topic, is if you realize that everyone is an individual with their own unique part to play, then the power of tolerance is easy to develop. All right, I hope you have a great start to your new year, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.